What's up? So this is video number 1 of the beginner trader series that I'm making. And so I am going to be making multiple videos, but in this I'm going to be going over simple things such as candles, trends, support and resistance, and time frames, right? I'm going to be going over those things, and we're going to continue to build on these things along the way along this series, but this can be very, very beneficial when it comes to you as a beginner trader, right? So I'm currently on TradingView. TradingView is just a platform in which you can look at the different assets, the different things you want to trade, whether it's stocks, whether it's crypto, forex, futures. Literally, this is the platform in which you can look and find how it is looking in the market, right? So for those who don't know how the market works, basically there are buyers and there are sellers, right? And basically whichever one has the more buying or selling power, that's the direction the market is moving in, right? So if there are more buyers and more money going to the upside, then the market is going to go up. If there are more sellers and more money selling, then the market is going to crash and go down. Well, not necessarily crash, but it's going to go down. And so, like I said, I'm going to be going over the basics. Like I said, this is TradingView. Create an account on here. It's absolutely free. You can get the paid version for additional features, but definitely create an account on TradingView. Now, like I said, I'm going to get into the basics. So we're going to start off with candles. Now, each of these are considered candles. All right. And at the same time, I am on the 1 hour time frame, meaning that each of these candles are 1 hour long. All right. If I switch to the 4 hour, that means each of these candles are 4 hours. All right. Each of these candles. Now, when it comes to the candles, you have to know how to read the candles. And the green candles means that price went up during that 4 hour period, since we're on the 4 hour time frame. And a red candle means price went down during that 4 hour time frame. Now, when it comes to the candles start and close at the body of the candles, right? So the body is the rectangular part, and then we have wicks, which I would get on, which I will explain after I break down how the candles work. Now, like I said, the candles open and close at the bodies of the candle. So when it comes to a green candle, the market opens that candle at the bottom. So if we started here, on this candle, it opened up at the bottom and it closed at the flat part at the top. Bam. Right? So green candles open at the bottom, close at the top. The next candle, which is green, what we'll realize is that candle started at the bottom, closed at the top. Right? Now, these sticks are what are called wicks. All right. Now, the wicks are basically where price reached within that 4 hour period, but it couldn't close or start at that point. Right. So in this 4 hour candle, price started here. Price started here. And at some point pulled back to this price, but it couldn't close there. And at some point pushed up to this price and couldn't close it and closed here. Right. So that's what the wicks are basically showing. And it can also show you areas of rejection that can be, helpful when finding potential entries. All right. Now, the red candles are the opposite, right? Red candles are going down. So a red candle is going to start at the top and close at the bottom, right? So as you can see, this green candle here closed at the top. That red candle started at the top, closed at the bottom. Next candle started at the top, closed at the bottom. Started at the top, closed at the bottom, right? So it's basically the same thing except the opposite direction, right? Now, when it comes to candles, higher time frame candles are going to hold a lot more weight than the lower time frame. Not saying we're not going to use lower time frame candles, but when it comes to larger moves, the larger time frame candles are more reliable, right? When it comes to, if you want to do some long-term trading, right? Now, when it comes to trading as well, we have these concepts here, right? We have trends, and then we have support and resistance, right? So we're going to start off with trends. So what is a trend? Trends is basically how the market is moving, all right? So the market can move in 3 different ways. It can move in an uptrend, it can move in a downtrend, and it can move in consolidation. So I'm going to start off with a uptrend. All right, so an uptrend, you're going to start with a low. All right, you're going to start with a low. The market is going to push in a upward direction, and then it's going to pull back. It is then going to push up farther and pull back, push up farther, right? Now, what I want you to pay attention to are these points here, and I'm going to actually label them. So we got a low, we have a high, we have a higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. So what do I mean by this? So we have this beginning point here, which is our low. Then, like I said, the market pushed up, and then it pulled back. What I want you to notice is this low is higher than this previous low, right? So that is why this is considered a higher low. Now we have a higher high, and the reason it's called a higher high is because it's higher than this previous high here, right? And so when you think of a trend, the most important concept, and you're going to hear me say this all the time, especially if you're in my free Telegram group, you're going to hear me say you have to look for your 1, 2, 3, right? What I mean by your 1, 2, 3 is, oops, let me fix this. What do I mean by your 1, 2, 3 is basically 1, 2, 3. So you got to look for your high, higher low, higher high. All right, so this is what you want to look for in an uptrend, movements like that. All right, now a downtrend is the same thing, but in the opposite direction, right? So now you're going to start off with a high and a low. You would then get your lower high and a lower low. So at this point here, we know we're in a downtrend because we have our 1, 2, 3. All right, just like over here, we had our 1, 2, 3. Over here, we have our 1, 2, 3. All right, once we see that, we know we are in a downtrend, and then we'll be looking for the market to pull back for entry off of our next higher low, but that would be for a different video. All right, and then we get our lower low. Now, when it comes to this, a lot of times you'll see people who may draw the line like this to use as a trend line, or a line like this to also follow along with the trend. All right, now what I'm going to do, I got to go over the third way the market moves, which I can actually go over the next part as well. So the other way the market may move is like this. I'm going to do it this way because I can go over 2 things at once. You might have movement like this, where the market can't break out of a channel, right? So when the market isn't in an uptrend or it's not in a downtrend, this is what you call consolidation. All right, now we're going to build upon this consolidation. Now with consolidation, you're going to have these things called support and resistance. All right, you're going to have support, you're going to have resistance. Now support, I want you to think about as your floor. Resistance, I want you to think about as your ceiling. All right, if you were to throw a ball at your floor, the ball will most likely go up, right? And if you were to throw a ball at your ceiling, the ball will most likely come down, right? So that's how the market can work, right? It get to a certain level, in which it doesn't want to go above, and they'll come back down, or a level that it don't want to go below, and they'll go back up. Now I want you to think of this as a multiple story building. Let's say you were just on the first floor, and now you went up to the second floor. You now have a new ceiling, you now have a new floor. And that's exactly what happens in the market. All right, so now that you went upstairs, what was once your ceiling is now your floor, right? Now it's below you, and now you have a new ceiling, right? So now your old resistance is now your support, and now you have a new resistance. And if price was to break through here, you would have a new level down here, which would be a new support, and your old support would be a resistance, right? So it basically will be able to play off of each other over and over again. So what I first want to show, since I went over trends, we're going to start off with trends, and I'm going to point out uptrends, and I'm going to point out some downtrends, right? And so if I were to, I just want to find some clean setups for y'all. If I were to look at this chart, right, I would say that the market here is going in a uptrend because we're seeing higher highs, higher lows over and over again, in which I'm going to draw it out so you can see. So we have our starting point here, our low. Now we have our high. Now we have our higher low, right? Now we have a new high. Now we have a higher low. A new higher high, new higher low. New higher high, new higher low. New higher high. And then it finally broke. And as you can see, once that trend broke, it's kind of moving sideways, kind of leaning more towards the downside. But as you can see, we have our high, higher low, higher high, higher low, over and over and over again, right? Another example of an uptrend. Find another example. I just want to find a real clean example. Let me go to someone else so I can, like I said, I'm just looking for a super clean example just so y'all can understand it. All right, uptrend. Uptrend. The market's moving up, right? An uptrend, there are going to be pullbacks. That's okay. Like I said, for the most part, it's just higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. So we start off with our low and our high. Higher low, higher high. Higher low, higher high. Higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. Right, and it's not always going to be the cleanest. Now we're going to have situations where in the beginning it was a lot more clean. You see how it's bouncing off of this line. But even when it's over here, it's still in an uptrend because it never broke this low. Now it could be in a minor downtrend, which we'll get farther into later on. But overall, it's still in the uptrend because it has not broken this low that created this high. All right, so that's how you'll look at an uptrend. Right, now downtrend, we're doing the opposite. All right, we're doing the opposite. And I'm gonna go back to ETH because they had a whole bunch of solid downtrends. I can't lie. Downtrend. We will want to see movements like this. we have our high, we have our push down. We have a minor push back up, creating this lower high, then we get a lower low. Lower high, lower low, right? Lower high. It tried to make a lower low, but then it led to this push up here, right? Now, like I said, we're going to get into more detail about it. Like I said, this is a minor change of trend, but as you can see, price never pushed up above this level here. If this was the level you was using as your lower high, and as you can see, it continued to push lower. So it really could have looked like this, where lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. It's uglier, but it's still valid and it's actually correct, right? So that's one example of a downtrend, right? Another example of a downtrend would be here. Start off at this high, low, lower high, lower low, right? So once we see this 1, 2, 3 concept, we know we are in a downtrend, and it's just continually trending downward. Continually trending downward. Like I said, it's not going to always look the cleanest, but there's going to be things that we can do to kind of help us clean it up and where we should be looking for the market to go to. And so, but that's how you will look at trends, right? Now, lastly, we go over support and resistance now on the charts. Now, when it comes to support and resistance, right, we're not going to be drawing them out as lines because they are more like zones, right? If you did lines, it would look chaotic, all right? But just in short, because I'm going to do a full training on this separately, basically what you want to see is just find areas where you can find multiple rejections. As you can see, I'm going to do it like this. Just to give you an example, like I said, it's going to be a whole separate training for this. As you can see, when the market gets to these areas, how the market ends up rejecting. Is it going to be perfect? No, that's why I said we use zones. But you can see how the market, even when it broke out a little bit here, how it still reacts to the zone and doesn't want to go lower, right? And so this is an example of support, resistance, right? But then you can look to the left and see how this support was a resistance prior, right? So a lot of these levels are going to be reused. You can see how it's even used over here, right? A lot of these levels are going to be reused and rejected throughout time, right? Throughout time, all right, where you can see rejections, 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 rejections over and over and over again, even here, 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 here. It just shows. And so these are going to be areas that we're going to be paying attention to, trying to get our entries kind of off of these levels with other confirmations as well. And like I said, I'm going to do a way more in-depth video on support and resistance and levels, right? But this is just, like I said, the very, very beginning of the series, right? So if you are a beginner trader, this is definitely something you want to keep on watching, continue to watch this series. If you are interested in a free Telegram group where I do live sessions, breaking down trades, provide trades, and all of that, I do have a free Telegram group that I will have down below in the description. And so if you are interested, definitely tap into that. And like I said, I want to continue to post these videos. I think I'm gonna do either a 3-4 part video series when it comes to this, but definitely looking to help as many people out as possible, right? I've been trading for some years now, and it's actually fun once you actually learn how to trade, right? A lot of people struggle with it. A lot of people get stressed out with it. But when you're done with this series, you'll have a solid grasp of how to trade. And like I said, if you want to continue to trade, you want to continue to learn and have access to me, like I said, I will have that Telegram group down below. But other than that, that is it for this video. See y'all.